Good evening. It is 6:30 p.m., January 15th, 2019, and we do have a quorum present, so we are going to call the City of Louisville Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to approve the meeting minutes from the December 18th meeting. Commissioners? Go ahead.
Move to approve.
Motion by
December
Karen.
18th.
Second?
Second.
Second by Mary Ellen. All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Third item on the agenda tonight is the consent agenda plats. We have 3 consent agenda plats, which are all plats that have no variance requests. So I'll read those all together. Item 3A is a final plat of Castle Hills, Tract Q, Addition, Lot 1, 2, and 3X, Block A on 38.44 acres out of the W.C. Cantwell Survey, abstract number 293, W.J. Bonner Survey, abstract number 122, B.F. Draper Survey, abstract number 367, James Dooley Survey, abstract number 343, and J.T. Sharon Survey, abstract number 1691, with a general business 2 zoning designation on Lot 1 and 2, and with a single-family residential zoning designation on Lot 3X, located at the northeast corner of King Arthur Boulevard and FM 2281. Agenda item 3B is the final plat of Great Lakes Crossing Addition, containing 30 residential lots and 3 open space lots on 6.6 acres out of the Levi N. Sparks Survey, abstract number 1135, Zone Plan Development, Single Family Residential District, located on the west side of McGee Lane, directly north of the Gulf, Colorado, and Santa Fe Railroad. Agenda item 3C is a final plat of Mosley Addition, Lot 1, Block A, on .438 acres out of the E. Pickett Survey, abstract number 1014, Zone General Business, located at the southwest corner of Mill Street and Harvard Avenue.
Good evening, Commissioners. There are 3 plats on the consent agenda to be considered for approval. There are no variances requested, and the staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the plats as presented.
Commissioners?
Motion to recommend approval of the plats in agenda item 3A, B, and C.
Motion by Jim.
Second.
Second by Alvin. All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 4 is a regular hearing for plats. We have, I believe, 1 plat this evening, and this is a plat that has requested variance. Agenda item 4A is a public hearing for preliminary plat of Castle Hills, Tract K, Addition, containing 7 commercial lots on 83.415 acres out of the BBB and CRR Survey, abstract number 180, J.E. McWhorter Survey, abstract number 1690, and Harrison Young Survey, abstract number 1448, with a general business 2 zoning designation located on the west side of State Highway 121, south of FM 544, with 4 associated variances as requested by Land Design, Inc., on behalf of Castle Hills Development, LLC, the property owner.
Commissioners, there's 1 plat on the regular hearing agenda to consider for approval. There are 4 variances requested. Just to give you a background on this plat, this preliminary plat was approved back in June of 2014. The plat, some of the areas were final platted. However, majority of the area remained as a preliminary plat. After 2 years, the preliminary plat expires. So with potential of developing the southern portion of these lots, the applicant has come back with a new preliminary plat for the entire area. The first 3 variances they're requesting are a repetition of the previously approved variances. They do have a portion of Crown Parkway built per that standard, and engineering staff looked into the requested variances, and they have no objection to it. They do agree that it has to be re-asked as the preliminary plat for the previous one has expired. And the 4th variance is for a dead-end street longer than 600 foot without a cul-de-sac, our fire marshal has taken their truck out there and tested it, and based on the field testing, that he feels comfortable supporting this variance.
Does it say
I
how
would just
long
add-
that is?
Yeah, I would just add that that 600-foot dead end is temporary condition, and so when the roads are added, that will no longer be the case.
Okay. Okay. Commissioners, do we have any questions for staff before we open the public hearing on this item? Nope. Having heard none, we will open the public hearing for agenda item 4A. If you are here to speak on this item, please come forward at this time. And having no one come forward for this item, we will close this public hearing. And is there any discussion or a motion for approval?
Motion to approve with the variances?
Motion by Will.
Second.
Second by Jim. All those in favor signify aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
The preliminary plat and the 4 associated variances will appear before the City Council for the final decision on January 28th, 19.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item 5, is public hearing for zoning and special use permits. We have 2 items on the agenda this evening. Item 5A is a public hearing for consideration of a special use permit for an auto outdoor display, sales, and repair facility on approximately 2.883 acres, legally described as lots 2R and 4R, Block A of the Storage Supercenter Edition, located at 811 East State Highway 121 Business, Zone General Business District, as requested by Kevin Lindell, U-Haul Moving and Storage of Lake Louisville on behalf of Americo Real Estate Company of Texas, Inc., and AREC 19 LLX, the property owners.
Good evening, Commissioners. So this is a request for the existing U-Haul facility. I did want to make you aware that the applicant sent in an email request to continue this public hearing until the February 19th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The reason for that continuance is they've recently switched their marketing managers, and the new marketing manager would like to have some time to review the request, including the signs, and staff has already scheduled a meeting with him for the 28th. So we are now recommending that this public hearing be opened since it was properly noticed, and be continued to the date certain of February the 19th. I'm happy to go over a little bit of the case with you. This is a lot 4R and 2R of the U-Haul Supercenter Edition. What they're proposing to do is to create a shunting lot that would be landscaped above and beyond our code requirements, where they could prepare vehicles for renting. With this, they would limit the number of vehicles that are parked along Business 121 to 5 vehicles, which would reduce the current number of vehicles that are parked up out front, but also allow U-Haul to have more vehicles in general on hand with the shunting lot. In addition, staff is recommending that they remove the existing pole sign within 3 years from the date of approval and replace it with a low-profile monument sign. That's not part of U-Haul's request. That is just part of staff's original recommendation. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have over that. And again, we do need to open the public hearing and then continue it to date certain of February 19th if we want to honor their request.
So just to clarify that the limit of the 5 parking space, or the 5 display spaces along Business 121, if I'm reading this correctly, that's limited by there's a little separate parking area for that? Is that how that is going to be enforced? Because I know otherwise that would be pretty hard to enforce.
So it's part of the SUP requirement that limits their display area, and it's shown on their site plan. So the remainder of the parking is for customers and other people parking, and then they would be limited with their display vehicles to 5 spaces. So that would be code enforcement, but it would be tied to the special use permit.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any other questions?
So we're voting to do the continuance or are we voting?
Yeah, staff's recommending that we honor the applicant's request to continue this public hearing to February the 19th.
Okay.
We will, however, have a public hearing at this time, allowing anyone to speak if they wish, and then we will continue the item. Okay. Well, if we have no other questions, then we will open the public hearing for agenda item 5A. If there's anyone here wishing to speak on this item, please come forward.
The public hearing's open now. If you'd like to speak.
My name is Paul Rula. We're the adjacent property owner,
Okay.
and we just saw this Monday. But apparently there's going to be plenty of time to kind of, we have some issues about traffic and flow and exactly how they're going to manage this lot because they have to come through us to get to this place. So we'll try to take that up with staff and get ahead of that before the next hearing. I think
Okay.
would be the best way to handle that, don't you think?
Okay. Can we get you to go ahead and sign in up
Sure.
here?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
So,
If not,
so
we'll,
somebody will, I guess there's going to be another opportunity for folks to speak?
we will have another public hearing.
Okay. Okay.
The recommendation from staff is that you do not close this public hearing, but there's a motion to continue it until the February 19th meeting.
Okay, so I will need a motion.
Motion. Go ahead. Move to continue this public hearing till February 19th, 1919.
Second. Motion by Karen, second by Jim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5B, we have a public hearing for consideration of a zone change request from General Business District to Old Town Center Business District on approximately .303 acre tract of land out of the J.W. King Survey, abstract number 696, and located at 151 Elm Street, as requested by RO Properties, the property owner.
Yes, good evening, Commissioner. So this is the property just to the south of Main Street on the north side of Elm Street. It's about a third of an acre. The plan is for, the Old Town Master Plan does call for it to be zoned Old Town Center, and this would be a straight zoning change from general business to Old Town Center. Staff did send letters, but the sign was not posted on the property by the property owner, so we cannot take any action at this time. We will renotice this for the February 5th Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay, so then we do not have a public hearing for this
Correct,
item this
because it was
evening.
not properly noticed.
Understand, okay. All right, so then there's nothing further we need to discuss on this item?
Correct.
Okay. All right, well, I believe with that the final item on the agenda is adjournment.
I'll move to adjourn.
Okay, motion by John. Second by William. All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Okay. It is 6:52 p.m. and we're going to call back to order again. We do still have a quorum present, and we are going to begin this work session by discussing our proposed code updates.
Yes, Commissioners, and I gave you a little handout, I don't have a PowerPoint today, but just a handout to kind of help follow along. We're doing both some minor code updates and then what we're calling the major code updates or the code overhaul. And so just to distinguish between those kind of two sets, the minor code updates are really just some kind of quick fixes to some language in the code that's inconsistent with our current practices, number one. So that would be submitting hard copies of plans and things of that nature when we do all online submittals now, just to kind of take that out of the code so that someone doesn't just show up on our doorstep with 12 hard copies someday. Hasn't happened yet, but we need to just clean that up. The second thing that we're doing with the minor code updates is we are making some changes to some of the aesthetic standards, particularly with architecture and screening standards. And what we're doing there is we're redefining what a masonry veneer is. Our current definition of masonry, and typically when people think of masonry, they think of brick and stone. Our current definition of masonry includes tilt wall and all sorts of other things that don't generally fall under the common understanding of masonry. So we're just going to kind of redefine it to be more in line with industry standard. Apart from that, we're not really changing the regulations terribly much in terms of architecture, except to prohibit EFIS within 9 feet of grade to try to keep that a little bit farther up so that the wear and tear isn't as great on that product. But other than that, a lot of the actual standards in terms of the percentage that's required to be brick and stone will remain the same. It's just we're going to kind of wordsmith it so that we're using the definition of masonry as people understand it, and then allow and list other materials that we do allow for percentage of buildings where those would be allowed. We're also restructuring that section of the code to be a little bit more clear. So you talk about residential buildings, then multifamily buildings, commercial buildings, mixed-use buildings, and they each kind of have their own set of standards. It's not dissimilar from what we have today, but it will just kind of outline it a little bit more clearly. And then for screening, we just want to make sure that all ground-mounted and roof-mounted equipment is screened from view from the street. So that we use shrubs or screening walls or parapet walls to screen that equipment from view. And we do most of that today. We're just kind of clarifying that language and putting it in one unified spot. Some of that is actually in Chapter 4, which is in the building codes, which talks about screening of dumpsters and recycling and that sort of thing. So we're just kind of bringing it all into one spot for screening. And then the third thing with the minor updates that we're doing is we've been working with Mindy White, who's our sustainability manager, and she was working to do some things to help promote green building and sustainability, which fits very much with our 2025 plan. And so there's 3 items there that we're trying to incorporate in the minor updates. Those are solar by right, so making sure that it's clear in the zoning ordinance or the development ordinances that we do allow for solar panels. It doesn't speak to them today. We do allow them. It's just not clearly defined that we allow them. So just going ahead and doing that, and that will also help us get points to becoming a solar smart city and getting some of those acknowledgments and commendations. Also to require that developments do not have to provide for recycling, but they do have to consider where recycling would go during the development process so that it could be added at a later time if that was something that was desired. And so that would be triggered only if they're having a dumpster to begin with. So if they're doing right now we have it drafted as a 2-yard dumpster or larger, then they also have to indicate on their site plan where the receptacle for recycling might go on that site, whether they choose to put it on there or not at that given time.
So the recycling, is it going to be everything, or is it just paper, or?
I would have to ask Mindy on exactly what is currently able to be recycled.
Yes, last time the city manager, Claire Swan, shared with staff that currently we're contracted to recycle all materials, including glass. She has gone into a little bit more detail about how glass made a difference, but my understanding is paper, plastic, aluminum, including glass, can be picked up by the waste management that we have contract with.
And it's all going to be thrown into that extra dumpster, the recycling dumpster, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And you're saying that recycling is still going to be optional in some places?
So yes, we do not have mandatory recycling. So a lot of, for example, our existing multifamily complexes don't provide any recycling for their residents. This would say that if you're a new commercial or multifamily site, or if you're redeveloping, you now have to at least designate a spot where that recycling receptacle could go, so it's an option in the future. Mm-hmm. We don't mandate that people recycle today.
So there's no thought to making it mandatory?
Not at this time. We're taking some incremental steps.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the third item, working with sustainability, actually there's 4 now that I think about it. The third item, though, was parking for EV vehicles. So requiring that when parking lots are paved, they don't necessarily have to put in the charging stations, but they need to put in the conduit so that those could again be added at a later date. So again, not mandating that there be electric parking, not going quite that far at this point in time, but just saying you need to have the conduit in place to make that an option in the future. You can go ahead and do it now. We're happy that you do it now, but you have to at least make it an option for the future.
Is there a ratio?
There is. I believe it's around 5%. I will double check on that and get back with you all. And then the last item for sustainability was to update our plant lists. We had a tree list that was fairly narrowly tailored, so we've expanded that to include adaptive and native drought-tolerant species. We've also updated our shrub list. There were a few species on our shrub list that have been classified as invasive species since the list was originally created in the 80s, and so we're removing those and going again with native and adaptive drought-tolerant shrubs. And we've also added language in there that would allow the parks director, they're part of our review team, to either approve alternative species that we might not have included on the list that might be perfectly viable. They have the expertise in that department. They do have people that work at LELA and that have that kind of background, so they could approve additional species. Or if there's another species that we learn to be invasive or no longer beneficial, if it's considered invasive, they can prohibit that species from being used. So those are the kind of more substantial changes to the code besides just the cleanup with the minor amendments. But they're fairly straightforward. So those minor amendments, we do hope to be coming before the Planning and Zoning Commission for public hearings in the March-April timeframe. So you'll see all those details and the exact language changes at that point in time. The major code updates are really to really relook at our code as a whole. Since it was originally drafted in the 80s, it's been updated incrementally over the time, but we really want to take kind of a holistic approach to it. The reason we want to do this is we want to make sure that we're implementing the Louisville 2025 plan and the small area plans. We want to facilitate some of the newer forms of development, make redevelopment easier, make the ordinances more user-friendly, create a more business-friendly development process, eliminate existing conflicts, and incorporate current best practices in development. So a lot of this will be kind of looking at what surrounding cities are doing, looking at what the issues are with our current codes. We're going to do a large stakeholder input process, which I'll go over. We're going to have a code review committee, and that's internal staff that's involved in the development process. We're also going to have a technical advisory roundtable, and this is going to be primarily with development professionals who work in Louisville, such as engineers, architects, attorneys, landscape architects, surveyors, etc. And they'll give us some kind of industry input. We're going to include stakeholder groups from the community. So those will be residents and members in Louisville to provide kind of that property owner resident perspective. And then obviously the P&Z and the City Council. We're anticipating having several joint meetings with the City Council for this process, including the first one, which is anticipated for March. The way that the process will work is that we will have the community input meetings. We're going to do joint meetings with P&Z and Council to kind of get their direction. And then we'll also meet with the technical roundtable committee. So we'll have staff review it. Then we'll have our technical advisory committee review it. We'll do our joint P&Z council meeting. Then we'll do another technical roundtable committee, and then we'll do the open house to kind of get all of that input from everybody into the draft ordinances. Then the ordinances will be kind of revised from those draft forms and scheduled for public hearings. So we're having these kind of loops where we're getting input from the people that are more technically involved in the code, our elected and appointed officials, going back to the technical kind of advisory roundtable folks, telling them this is what we heard from the city council, They heard your feedback. This is what they kind of said, so we kind of closed that loop, and then going forward with the public hearings. So that's the circle.
Work sessions, are they going to be, prior to a council meeting or a P&Z meeting?
They'll probably be prior to council meeting. And so this code update is being done in phases. The first phase is going to be looking at the zoning ordinance. The anticipated timeline for that is to have our kind of joint meetings in August, in the summer timeframe, and then to have the public hearings in the November, December timeframe. So that would be for the zoning ordinance. So there'll be a lot of work between staff and them, and we'll also do those technical advisory board meetings. At the end of this month, actually, we are doing some focus group meetings with developers, with design professionals, and with some community members, just to get some initial input before they even begin making any changes. And those will be really helpful. Then they'll begin making changes to the zoning ordinance or drafting up a new zoning ordinance. And then again, we'll go through that feedback process on the draft before scheduling for public hearings. And that'll be in late 2019. And then after that, we'll begin the land development code process. So that'll kick off immediately following the zoning code, and then hopefully go through that kind of feedback loop April, June of 2020, and then go for adoption in late summer, early fall of 2020 in the August, September timeframe.
So when you say the development standards, preparation of draft development standards, that's engineering standards, right? So
Yes.
all of that is going to be updated as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And a lot of the standards we may be very comfortable with and decide that they are working well for us and we don't wish to change them, but it may be that we reformat them or just make them more clear. A lot of the diagrams that illustrate them are not very helpful, so we might update those, that sort of thing.
Okay. So this is going to be a lengthy process, and so I'm assuming there's going to be, I mean, the development's not going to stop while all this stuff is happening, so we'll just have to work through a
Yes.
transitional period.
Yes, and that's part of what that's part of what the consultants are going to come up with is kind of a game plan, especially for that interim period when we've adopted a new zoning ordinance, but maybe not quite our development standards yet. So we may have to do with the zoning ordinances what we're calling patches to the development code just to make sure that everything works smoothly until everything's updated. But yes, everyone that submits, will follow the codes that are in place at the time of their submittal. So there will be a transition period as well, where things might come before you that came in prior to the new codes being adopted, and they'll still be under the old codes. So it will be a transition.
Have consultants been picked yet?
Yes, we are using Kimley Horn, Karen Walls, and Phyllis Gerald. And it's a great team. We're really happy to have them. Kimley Horn is serving as kind of the lead and project manager on this project, and they'll be doing really a lot of the formatting and illustration type work. Most of the drafting will be done by Phyllis Gerald. She was the director of planning in Plano for a long time and has great expertise. And then Karen Walls will be leading the outreach and engagement process. And she, the same team has worked on other projects here in Louisville, including our small area plans and the 2025 plan. Karen worked on the 2025 plan, so.
So if there's anything that's given, special permits or variances or whatever, they're going to be treated as existing non-conforming, I guess? Like
Yeah.
if they get in, they get it approved and then maybe there's a change.
Yeah, so anything that's approved and then the code changes would be considered what's called legal nonconforming. That's under our current codes, right? And they're allowed to remain as is until such time as there's redevelopment or something on the site.
Trigger something that makes you bring it up to code, right?
Exactly. Now, we do anticipate moving forward. Louisville is pretty well built out, as we all know. So one of the things we really want to do with this is make redevelopment a little bit easier and to design our code for that. So we may be looking very closely at those nonconformity rules and what exactly happens in that scenario.
Cool.
And so this would not impact our overlays that we just did, right?
No, we're actually hoping to use the overlays for inspiration for some of the things with the code update. With the I-35 overlay, we delegated a lot of authority to staff and to the overlay board that was created, which is the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I think that that model is working fairly well in the few cases that we have had come before the overlay board and the council and staff. And so we'd like to see, I think that model is especially helpful with redevelopment and with small infill sites where it's very challenging sometimes to meet the letter of the code and where some flexibility is needed. So I think that we're definitely going to look at that as kind of a model to build off of, but we are going to keep the I-35 overlay.
Okay. Okay. Is that all you had?
That's all I have. If y'all have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay.
But it is a 2-year process, so it should be a lot of fun. I'm very excited about it. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions before we adjourn? Okay. With that, I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Motion by Mary Ellen,
Second.
second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.